Greetings! Welcome back to yet another video. Today, I'll be going over the good and the bad of Mario power-ups. Yes, this is another Mario video. This is primarily a Mario channel, so what did you expect? Power-ups are one of the most iconic parts of the Mario franchise. They grant us special abilities, ranging from shooting projectiles, to flying through the air, to even harnessing the powers of animals, and sometimes even becoming completely invincible. Nearly every mainline Mario game introduces at least a few new power-ups, because they're just that much of a staple to the series. I genuinely can't imagine how Mario games would function without them. That said, not every power-up is created equally. Some are incredible, some are just okay, and others make you groan the moment you pick them up. So today, we're ranking the top 5 best and worst Mario power-ups to find out which ones are the cream of the crop, and which ones belong at the very bottom of the barrel. Before we get into the list, a couple of ground rules. This ranking will not include any invincibility, teleportation, or flight power-ups that only appear after you've died a certain number of times. These items are overpowered by design, and including them would make the best side of the list painfully boring, because they'd obviously take up the top spots. So for the purposes of this ranking, that means that any of those power-ups you can think of won't be included, like the White Tanuki Leaf, the P-Wing, the P-Acorn, and the Super Luigi Guide, if that even counts as a power-up. The same logic applies to power-ups that instantly kill you. These are intentionally designed to be bad, and it wouldn't be fair to rank them alongside power-ups that are at least trying to help you, even if some of them fail miserably at that. So again, for the purposes of this ranking, the Poison Mushroom won't be included. With the intro and guidelines out of the way, let's get into the rankings, starting with the top 5 worst Mario power-ups. Number 5. The Mini Mushroom. First introduced in New Super Mario Bros. DS, this tiny blue shroom shrinks Mario down to roughly the height of like 3 pixels, and right away that's a problem. Mario becomes so small that it's genuinely hard to even see him. You constantly have to stop and reposition yourself just to make sure you're actually controlling him properly, and half the time you're asking yourself, wait, where am I? This is especially bad in New Super Mario Bros. DS, because the game is already super pixelated due to being on the DS, and Mini Mario just blends into the background enemies and level geometry, turning basic platforming into a frustrating game of visual hide and seek. And the actual functionality of the power-up isn't much better. You become insanely fragile, everything kills you in one hit, and you're forced to ground pound just to defeat basic enemies like Goombas. Hell, even the higher floatier jump isn't much of a positive, because you launch so high into the air that you're basically guessing where you will land half of the time. Hell, the Mini Mushroom is so disliked that it was even portrayed as a power down in the Mario movie, such as when Mario accidentally uses it during his fight with Donkey Kong, which obviously didn't do him any favours, and when it was used to shrink and weaken Bowser in the climax of that movie. That said, this is still at the start of the list because it does have some redeeming qualities. Being able to run on water and climb up walls is genuinely cool and can be useful from grabbing coins or 1-ups. And on top of that, being able to access secret warp pipes that only Mini Mario can enter, which often lead to star coins, is a really nice touch. These are small, no pun intended, positives, but as you'll see later in the list, having at least 3 or 4 positives is a luxury compared to some power-ups that offer absolutely nothing. Number 4. The Frog Suit. First introduced in Super Mario Bros. 3, the Frog Suit dramatically improves Mario's swimming ability. When this is used underwater, it feels amazing. Traversing through the water becomes smoother, faster, and far more controllable. When you pick this up in an underwater level, it almost feels like a sigh of relief, especially in an older Mario game where swimming controls can often feel stiff and awkward. So, why is it on the worst side of the list? Because it's only useful underwater, and only about 10% of Super Mario Bros. 3 actually takes place underwater. On land, the Frog Suit goes from a miracle to a nightmare. Frog Mario is painfully slow, his movement feels janky, and his jumps are incredibly hard to control. Any short hop forward or upward sends you flying way higher than expected, and as we learned with the Mini Mushroom, too much jump height is not always a good thing. You're basically asking to get hit, You move too slowly to dodge enemies, and when you do jump, you're just begging Lakitu or some other airborne menace to smack you out of the sky. I wouldn't even call this power up average because it's only good 10% of the time. So it's really no surprise that this power up hasn't really returned outside of Maker and, debatably, Super Mario Odyssey. It's essentially been replaced by a much better version, which we may or may not be seeing on the other side of the list, who knows. Number 3. The Super Ball Flower. I'm willing to bet most of you have never heard of this one. First introduced in Super Mario Land, the Super Ball Flower is a twist on the classic Fire Flower. Instead of shooting fireballs, Mario shoots bouncy balls. Don't ask where they're coming from, just roll with it. As the name implies, these balls bounce all over the place after being fired, kind of like a green shell from Mario Kart, and on paper, that sounds fun. The problem is execution. Where green shells are easy to aim and incredibly satisfying when you land a hit, the Super Ball Flower feels completely out of your control. The moment you fire a ball, it immediately hits the ground no matter how you aim it and starts ricocheting everywhere. You can't shoot forward, you can't shoot straight, you can't shoot upward. Everything turns into a chaotic game of pinball. So whether or not you're actually aiming at the enemy, it's basically a coin toss whether or not it'll actually hit it. What makes this even more disappointing is that Nintendo didn't even bother improving it when it returned in Super Mario Maker 2. It functions exactly the same, which is a shame because the idea itself is quite good. Taking out a chain of enemies with a single bouncing projectile should feel amazing, but the lackluster execution just completely sinks it. Number 2. The P-Balloon. First introduced in Super Mario World, the P-Balloon grants Mario the ability to fly, something a lot of power-ups in this series do, and this is easily the worst version of that idea. For starters, it's a temporarily power-up. You only get a few seconds of flight before it abruptly wears off. Timed power-ups just feel like such a waste of, well, time. It makes you wonder why you were even given it in the first place if it's just going to be ripped away seconds later. And if that timer runs out while you're in mid-air, you're toast. That feels incredibly unfair because power-ups are supposed to reward you, not set you up for failure. Instead of feeling empowered, you're constantly watching the clock and panicking about where you're going to land when it inevitably runs out. On top of that, the controls are some of the loosest in the entire series. A gentle flick of the control stick sends Mario drifting way further than intended, which absolutely wrecks precise platforming and timing. Now, to be fair, this power-up did return in Super Mario 64 DS, and it functioned a bit better there. It moved at an absolute snail's pace, but it was much easier to control and the movement felt far more deliberate and playable. But in Super Mario World though, this thing is an absolute joke. A ridiculously short time limit, insanely loose controls, and to top it all off, you die in one hit instead of two, which is different from nearly every other Mario power-up. It just sucks, plain and simple. And before we get to number 1, here's some quick dishonourable mentions. Think of these as number 6 through 10. First up, the spin drill. Seen in Super Mario Galaxy 2, the spin drill allows Mario to burrow through dirt at extreme speeds, letting you travel from one side of a planet to the other in seconds. Functionally, it's actually pretty useful, but only for very specific circumstances. The massive problem? You can't get rid of it unless you take damage. While you're holding the spin drill, you lose access to a ton of essential movement options. You can't crouch, backward somersault, long jump, or even perform the basic spin attack. You know, the core mechanic of Mario Galaxy that's essential for defeating enemies. If this item just had a simple let go button, it would be perfect for what it's meant to do, but as it stands, once its usefulness is over, it becomes incredibly frustrating to deal with. The Goomba Mask. Only seen in Super Mario 3D World, the Goomba Mask puts, well, a Goomba mask on your face. And yes, it's about as useless as it sounds. Goombas are by far the easiest enemy in the entire series. You jump on them once, and you're done. So why of all enemies would you create a disguise specifically for Goombas? This power up would actually be pretty useful if it were a Hammer Bro mask, a Rocky Wrench mask, or even a Koopa mask. Enemies that require at least some effort to beat. This could have been a contender for number 1 on the worst power up list, but what saves it is that it's not frustrating to use. It's stupid and pointless, sure, but it does do what it's supposed to do, stop Goombas from approaching you, so it actually serves its purpose. And honestly, that's still better than power-ups that actively annoy the hell out of you. Galaxy's Fire Flower. This is yet another timed power-up, and as I've already said, timed power-ups just feel like such a waste, and doing this to the Fire Flower, one of the most satisfying and fun power-ups in the entire franchise, is baffling. It's not like letting players keep it would break the game or anything, it's a Fire Flower, not a goddamn invincibility star. It doesn't help that throwing fireballs in a fully 3D space is already inherently awkward. Galaxy suffers from this the most, since it's a true 3D game, unlike 3D Land and 3D World, which are basically 2D games wearing a 3D coat of paint. So yeah, not a great take on an absolute classic. The Rock Mushroom. Also exclusive to Galaxy, the Rock Mushroom is a cool idea with terrible execution sadly. The boulder moves far too fast, making it almost impossible to control properly. You'll inevitably hit something you weren't aiming for, get launched off the platform, and plummet to your doom. The fact that it relies on Wii motion controls only makes it even more frustrating too. It's really no surprise that this one hasn't returned in any shape or capacity since Galaxy. And the number one worst Mario power-up is the Spring Mushroom. Oh man, this power-up really sucks. It sucks big time. It has the worst controls out of anything on the list, the frog suit and P-Balloon included, and god, it's just so annoying. If the Super Ball Flower felt like a lack of control, this is that problem turned up to 11. Instead of your projectiles bouncing all over the place, you bounce all over the place. Basic movement becomes a nightmare. Simply navigating flat or terrain feels incredibly dangerous, and you'll almost certainly fall into bottomless pits or smack into enemies by accident. And jumping? Jumping is an absolute joke. The timing is completely off. Nearly every time you try to spring into the air, you'll feel robbed because the delay between pressing the jump button and actually jumping is absurd. It never feels responsive, and it feels like you're fighting against the game. And somehow, wall jumping is even worse. There are actually sections where you're clearly meant to wall jump across platforms using the Spring Mushroom. But trust me, you are much better off just not using it. You'll have a far better time brute forcing the section. Every other power up on this list at least has something going for it. The Mini Mushroom allows you to run in water and climb up walls. The Frog Suit is fantastic underwater. The Super Ball Flower can occasionally take out swarms of enemies if you get lucky. Hell, even the P-Balloon at least functions as a flying power up, even if it's short-lived and horribly janky. But the fucking Spring Mushroom, it has no advantages, no utility, no satisfaction, and no fun. There is actually no reason to use this power up under any circumstances, and that's why it's easily my pick for the number one worst Mario power up. Now, with all that negativity out of the way, let's turn to the bright side, eh? It's time to look at what Mario does right. Let's get into the top 5 best Mario power-ups. Starting with number 5. The Penguin Suit. First introduced in New Super Mario Bros. Wii, the Penguin Suit is one of the best executions of an animal power-up in the entire series. At its core, it's essentially a vastly improved version of the Ice Flower. You can still shoot ice balls just like you normally would, but unlike the Ice Flower, the Penguin Suit adds an entirely new movement mechanic, sliding across ice on your belly like an actual penguin, and this is where the power-up really shines. Traversing icy terrain feels incredible. You move with this perfect sense of momentum, fast enough to feel exciting, but never so fast that you lose control. It doesn't feel sluggish, and it never feels uncontrollable either. Blasting across long stretches of ice, perfectly timing jumps and obstacles along the way, is ridiculously satisfying. It makes ice levels far more fun than they usually are. Now, thankfully, this power-up also avoids the biggest mistake of the Frog Suit. It still feels great to use on land. Sure, it's at its best on ice levels where you can fully utilise the belly slide, but outside of those levels, it still functions just as well as any other solid Mario power-up. And yes, I'll admit some bias here. Penguins are my favourite animal, so seeing Mario and Nagan waddling around in adorable penguin suits automatically gives this power-up a few bonus points in my book. Number 4. The Cloud Flower. Making its one and only appearance in Super Mario Galaxy 2, the Cloud Flower is a built-in power-up almost exclusively around creative platforming. It allows Mario to spawn puffs of cloud beneath his feet while he's in mid-air, and you can create up to 3 clouds at a time. But this limitation really matters because cloud flowers are usually placed very close together, meaning you can constantly refill your supply, and in practice, this gives you near infinite clouds. One of the biggest strengths of this power-up is just how responsive it is. When you spawn a cloud, it appears instantly, there's no input delay whatsoever. That makes it incredibly useful in tight situations, where you need just a bit more height to reach a platform or escape an enemy. Each cloud lasts for around 10 seconds, which might not sound like much, but it's honestly more than enough time to plan your next move, especially if you have another cloud ready to go. But the real reason this power-up ranks so high is the sheer amount of insane platforming potential it offers. Miss a wall jump? Spawn a cloud and save yourself. Need extra height? Backflip, then create a cloud. And pair a cloud flower with long jumps? Completely broken. You can cover absolutely absurd distances when you combine these mechanics properly, and it makes movement feel incredibly free and expressive. The only real downside is that, in the original Wii version, you have to shake the Wii remote to spawn a cloud, which, as expected, was a pain. But thankfully, this was fixed in the recently released Switch version, making this power-up even better. And aside from that small issue in the Wii version, the Cloud Flower is just an absolute banger. Number 3. The Cape Feather. First introduced in Super Mario World, the Cape Feather is, in my opinion, the best flying power-up in the series. With the Cape Feather, if you get a proper running start and time everything correctly, you can soar to heights and distances that very few other power-ups even come close to. Gliding through the air, constantly dipping slightly up and down to maintain momentum, while either blazing through levels or grabbing coins along the way is unbelievably exhilarating. And the controls are smooth as butter, there's no stiffness, no jank, everything feels fast, responsive and precise. That speed also makes it incredibly useful in high pressure situations, where quick movement can save you from getting hit. It also completely outclasses the Tanuki Leaf in both speed and flight height. Offensively it's better too, the spin attack comes out instantly with a press of a button, unlike a Tanuki Suit tail attack which has a speed delay. That said, I do prefer the design of the Tanuki Suit. The Tanuki Suit looks more detailed, expressive and visually interesting, while the Cape Feather just slaps a yellow cape onto Mario. So if we could get a game that combines both of them, that'd be great. Even so, the Cape Feather remains one of the best power-ups the Mario series has ever seen, and is definitely the crown jewel in terms of flying power-ups in this series. Number 2. The Fire Flower. Yep, the OG Fire Flower really does earn a spot this high in the list. In my opinion, it's the second best non-invincibility power-up in the entire Mario series. Even in the earliest Mario games, this power-up is fantastic. The fireballs shoot out incredibly fast, with virtually no input delay whatsoever. You can fire off 2 fireballs and immediately jump again, which feels amazing. You're able to keep moving, keep platforming and keep attacking all at the same time while the fireballs take out enemies ahead of you. It's also one of the most universally effective power-ups in the series. While it might not one-shot bigger enemies, it can damage almost every foe in the game, and if you really wanted to, you could defeat some bosses only using the Fire Flower. The Fire Flower doesn't waste your time, it's just pure, high-octane fun, plain and simple. And even in the 3D games, Galaxy excluded, this power-up still rules. Yes, aiming fireballs in a 3D space is a bit trickier, but when you land hits with it at that speed, it still feels satisfying. The Fire Flower just slaps, plain and simple. It's an absolute staple of the series, and I will never get over the fact that Smash Ultimate removed Fire Mario as an alternate costume. Like, what was Nintendo thinking? We should all equip Fire Flowers and burn Nintendo headquarters down to the ground for that one. Ha, I'm just kidding. Mostly. And before we get to number 1, here's some quick honourable mentions. Again, think of these as number 6 through 10. First up, the Super Mushroom. The very first Mario power-up ever created at least deserves a mention. It increases your size and gives you an extra hit point. And that's it. It's as basic as a power-up gets. Yes, it's been massively overshadowed by flashier items over the years, but the original deserves respect for being the one that started it all. Next, the Superstar. Another OG. First introduced in Super Mario Bros. On the NES, Grab this iconic yellow star and you become completely invincible while one of the most recognisable tunes in gaming history plays. It's obviously amazing, but your moveset doesn't really expand beyond a slight speed boost, and the extremely short time limit means you don't get to enjoy it for very long. A few extra seconds wouldn't hurt. Still, it's too iconic not to mention. Next up, the Goomba Shoe. A seriously underrated power up. Mario hops into a giant shoe originally meant for Goombas, and it allows you to stand on spikes, which is incredibly useful in Super Mario Bros. 3, where spikes are everywhere. It also increases your jump height, but not so much that you lose control or visibility. Simple, effective, and surprisingly useful. I dig it. Next, the Gold Flower. Exclusive to New Super Mario Bros. 2, the Gold Flower fires massive golden fireballs that turn anything they touch into coins. The huge blast radius lets you wipe out groups of enemies with ease, and the fact that everything turns into coins, which then gives you extra lives, makes it both fun and practical. Lastly, the Propeller Mushroom. First introduced in New Super Mario Bros. Wii, the Propeller Mushroom is probably the third best flying power-up in the series. It launches you straight upward at high speed with virtually no input delay, which is especially important for flight-based power-ups. You can also hover for a decent amount of time, giving you space to plan where you'll land. The downside is that you can't fly forward, only upward, which objectively puts it behind options like the Cape Feather or Tanuki suit. Still, it's a fantastic alternative in the games it appears in. And now, the number one best Mario power-up is the Lucky Bell. First introduced in Super Mario 3D World, this power-up is phenomenal. It's easily the most versatile power-up in the entire series. With the Lucky Bell, you can do almost anything. You can climb up walls, launch yourself across huge distances, slash enemies, and run at absurd speeds. Seriously, pick Toad, equip the Lucky Bell, and you'll absolutely blast through levels in this game. It's no surprise speedrunners abuse the thing non-stop. Beyond the expanded moveset, the moveset itself feels incredible. You'll gain all the traits of a cat: speed, agility, and flexibility. Your character becomes insanely fluid and responsive, capable of pulling off nearly any jump you can think of. You feel dexterous, like the game is in your hands. Plus, it also practically guarantees that you'll hit the golden flagpole in every level. Even if you miss the gold section, your character automatically climbs up to the top. If you're going for 100% completion, like I was last year, then this power up is an absolute godsend. Now yes, the Super Bell is technically the more iconic version, but I'm giving the edge to the Lucky Bell because it can do everything the Super Bell can, plus turn into a statue that crushes enemies. So objectively, that makes it better. But to be honest, for all intents and purposes, they are basically the same power up, so you can absolutely consider the Super Bell the number one spot as well. I love this power up to bits, and I'm so happy it's become a modern staple to the series. It's shown up more and more in recent games, and in sharp contrast to the Mini Mushroom, it was even portrayed as a completely overpowered item in the Mario movie, when Mario uses it to absolutely demolish Donkey Kong. For all these reasons and more, the Lucky Bell is my pick for the number one best Mario power up. And with that, the lists are complete. If you enjoyed listening to me ramble about this silly little franchise once again, I hope you'll stick around for more. I'm thinking about expanding the channel a bit, maybe to reviewing movies, TV shows and even other video games, while still keeping Mario as the main focus. I don't know, we'll see what the future holds for this channel. I just hope to keep this good momentum going. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.